Hello, and thank you for watching The Righteous Kitchen, a cooking and baking blog found at www.therighteouskitchen.blogspot.com. Today I am going to share with you my recipe for pork carnitas. Now these are not the typical pork carnitas that you would get in Mexico. Those are pork that has been simmering in lard over several hours. Not everybody can do that. They usually do it in a large copper pot outside. This is just going to be a recipe that's very simplified for the home cook, and we are going to simmer these in the crock pot. But so that they will still be carnitas, which is little pieces of fried pork. At the end, we're going to render the lard that comes off of here, the fat. We're going to render that fat down, and we're going to crisp up the pieces of pork. Okay, so to start, I am using a pork shoulder arm picnic roast, and I was able to find that at my local grocery store for $1.39 a pound, and this weighs 8.47 pounds. So I'm just giving you a little bit of information, and then I'll probably weigh the meat afterwards so that we can see what the end result of that is after everything cooks down. Okay, get rid of this. And this has a bone that goes across. You can see one end of the bone and the other. So what I want to do so that this fits in my crock pot a little bit better is I am going to trim this down. This fat is really tough to cut through. All right. So I have my hands clean, and I just made a video for this pork carnitas seasoning. So what I did is I probably tripled the batch of this, and then I have it in a spice jar in my cabinet. So now I'm going to just go ahead and apply this to the pork, and I've got the pour spout open because I want to put a liberal amount on there. So I'm going to use one hand to keep it clean, and then the other hand can touch the pork. And just be generous with this. Just kind of rub it in. And then the other piece, we need to get the whole area. Okay. All right, I'm going to put it into the crock pot, and I'm going to refrigerate this for 2 hours, and then I'll come back and start the cooking process. Okay, this roast has been chilling in the crock pot for a couple hours. It's nice and marinated with that dry rub. And I'm going to go ahead and get this ready to start cooking. So what I have is a ½ cup of 7-Up. And then I have 2 oranges and 2 limes. And I'm just going to roll them around and kind of soften them up so that they can release their juices. And let me get a knife here. So I'm just going to quarter these limes. Then I give them a little squeeze before I put them in here. All right, so we have the limes, and then we're going to do the same, just quarter the oranges. Give them a little squeeze. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we've got this pork all prepped. We cut it in half and so it would fit nice in our crock pot. We marinated it with our homemade rub. Have a little bit of 7-Up, couple of oranges, couple of limes, and I'm gonna put it in my slow cooker and cook this on high for probably about 4 hours. Now what I'm going for is for it to be fork tender, but I don't want it to be at the point where it's just shredding and falling off the bone. I want the pork to be fork tender, okay? Because I'm going to cube this instead of shredding it. All right, so about 4 hours, I'll come back and check on it and show you what it looks like then. Okay, the carnitas have been cooking in the crock pot about 6.5 hours. And I want to show you what they look like. See how you can pull it apart, but it'll hold its shape. It doesn't really shred without having to give it some effort. That's what we want. We don't want it just stringy like that, because I want to cube this up. So let me get the tongs. Okay. Just be very careful. You want to try to keep it together. And then if you see any fat, those huge pieces of fat, I'm going to put those right on the chopping block. So what I'm going to do is get all of this into this bowl, and I'm going to let it cool slightly. While that meat cools, I'm going to go ahead and strain off the oranges and the lime. I'm going to go ahead and get those out of the way. And then I'll just return the liquid and the fat to the crock pot. Just put the fat and the cleaned up broth back in the crock pot. Now I'll start working this carnita here, and just come in and clean it up. If you could remove any gristle, get rid of all that, you put it back in the crock pot. Okay, I wanted to give you a better look here. I made some room. So I've got all of the meat out, and I'm removing the bones, the fat, the citrus. I'm cleaning up everything. I'm just leaving the broth and any pieces of fat, cartilage, stuff like that that I can render down to fry these pieces of meat in. So I'll just take a piece of meat, just kind of scrape the fat off. Now traditionally this would all just be chopped like a pulled pork and all this fat would just be eaten. But we're not going to waste it. It's still going to be delicious. We're going to have all the flavor in here of that fat. You don't really want to shred it up. You want to keep the pieces what you have here. Okay, so that's all of our meat. Oh, there's a couple more pieces here. Okay. I'll give this a little chop because I want as much of this melted down. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is put it back on high in the crock pot for a couple more hours, and then I will defat that. I'll get all of the fat removed from it and then save it. So what I'm going to do with the remainder of this meat here, I'm going to grab my scale. All right. Let me wipe this down. 3.4 pounds of meat. We started with 8.5 pounds. So we lost about 5 pounds to fat and gristle and bone. So that's good information if you're planning on feeding a crowd. So 3.4 pounds is what we have to work with. I'm going to go ahead and refrigerate this overnight. Okay, I wanted to show you, earlier today I made pork carnitas. We would need 2 of them. So this one here has already cooled off in the refrigerator. And I just wanted to show you, after you cool it, it's much easier to chop. And I chop them into probably 1/2-inch pieces. And when they're cold, it's going to keep its shape better than it was when it was warm from the crock pot. And these don't have to be perfect, but I do like them when they're cubed and fried, as opposed to, you could eat them shredded out of the crock pot, but they don't really get fried. All right, so that's just how it is when it's cold and you can cube it. Okay, I have let that fat render down for about 3 more hours after the pork was cooked. And I'm gonna just defat it right now. And what I'm going to do is, let me press this real quick. Get a spatula and just kind of get all of that lard out of there. And this is going to be our cooking oil to crisp up the pork. Okay, I think that's good. And I have a defatting cup that I'm going to use. If you don't have one, you can pour the broth into a clear container and then draw up the liquid using a turkey baster. You would draw out the liquid using a turkey baster and then keeping the fat that floats up to the top. Or you could refrigerate this and then the fat comes to the top and you would just skim that layer off. Last night separated the fat and the stock from those pork carnitas, and I wanted to show you, I made 2 batches, and then this is some of the fat that I just used the defatting cup, and then I poured the other in here. It doesn't do 100% of the fat, but the fat will float up over here, and then you can just go ahead and scoop it all together. But I don't want to waste any of the fat or the broth. Okay. So here it is. Here's all the broth. And here's all the fat. That's quite a bit of fat. And then down here, there's a little bit of the broth that liquefied. All right, so I am going to come back later with frying up the carnitas. So I'll be back in just a little bit. We're going to put together a really nice lunch. Okay, it's time to fry up those carnitas. And I have bread options, which include corn tortillas, flour tortillas, and I did a shortcut chalupa where I just fried up some prepackaged naan. And that's a nice accompaniment for this. And then I have beans ready, some Monterey Jack cheese, some sour cream, my carnitas seasoning. I have pico de gallo that I made. I have that rendered lard that I'm going to fry the meat in. And I have some homemade guacamole. And basically that's all that I'm going to need. So let's turn our attention to the grill here, and we will go ahead and get started. So the grill has been heating up, and on there I have the broth that was left over from cooking the carnitas. And some people like to dip that in there, kind of like a birria taco that's made with goat or beef. You can have that same concept with the pork. So I have this broth and it's coming up to heat, and I am going to go ahead and put in a tablespoon of that pico in there, maybe 2 tablespoons of the pico, and we're going to let that warm up. And then the lard. We're going to get that all over this griddle. And the griddle's really hot. That's okay. And we have the cube carnita. I'll put that right in there. You can put some more lard, that's fine. But we're not going to want to stir fry this or anything. We just want to let the pork start to crisp up. And now that carnitas rub, I'm going to give it a heavy dusting all over the pork. Alright, now I'm going to need to make room for my beans. So I'm going to take a little corner right here. And I kind of want that, I've got a little bit of lard right there. But just let everything crisp up nicely. We don't want it to steam. We still need everything to get a nice crisp edge on it. I'll take a little more lard over here in the corner, and then this will be for the beans. And don't touch that, it's hot, this little thing of broth right there, that's hot. So we kind of got everything going at one time. We can mash the beans. The reason I'm using beans is I want that meat to have something to stick onto when I put it on the bread. And that could be if you want to make a burrito or like a puppy taco. So these have been going a couple of minutes, and I want to look at them before I start. It's already getting some crisp browning action happening. These are going to be really nice and tender. They've cooked in the crock pot, and all that fat has melted out. They're getting a nice texture like you would have of authentic carnitas that have been simmering in lard. We don't want to mess with them too much. I'm just trying to separate them so that they have room to crisp up. So here's one of the fried up naan bread, and I'll show you a package real quick. I was going to make the Indian fry bread, but the recipe that I got from my dad on that requires 2 hours for it to proof. So I thought I would just try these. Well, this is gyro. You could use gyro or naan. Just pan fry it in some oil, a shallow fry, and it'll get nice and puffy and golden brown. It's like a nice puffy taco. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get a layer of beans, spread on there. And then I have some Monterey Jack cheese off to the side. So I'll put that. And now this carnitas have ground up really nice. Oh, look at that, just beautiful. Nice, crisp on them, and that's what you really want. I like them when they're fried as opposed to shredded. When they're shredded, they're still good, but they just don't have the flavor that you get when you have these at a restaurant. To me, it's all about that slight crisp edge that's put on them. And then we're, utilizing that lard and just keeping the flavor in there and then hitting it with a little extra of that marinade. They're really good. Very delicious. Put this over here. So these are done. I'm going to move them. I'm not worried about them being close together now, but I want to show you another option while I'm here. And that is to fry up the corn tortillas. And sometimes I don't even use any tortillas. Sometimes I'll just use a sweet potato. All right, here we go. We're going to put our lard. And we're going to put these, just hit them. Now, because we're cooking with all this high-fat protein, I didn't make any rice. So, I didn't think we needed to have rice with all this. So you just double these up because they will break on you. So you need double. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a little Monterey Jack cheese on here. So I want to kind of keep it all together. And then put your meat. You can just build them right here. Put a little pico. And then just scoot this right on the plate, and we're probably going to need some more of that. So we have plenty of lard to cook with. And then rendering that lard and cooking with it is what takes this basic crock pot carnitas recipe, and now it's a whole game changer. All right, we're going to do this again. Put that cheese on here. Get some of that really perfectly crispy carnitas meat. Hit it with some pico. Here you go. I'll do one more. And then I'll get you some close-ups of all this. And that broth is boiling now, so you're going to have to be very careful with that. Here's the broth that's really popular nowadays. All right, we're going to get those together. Hit it with some cheese. Get this crispy carnitas meat on here. Some pico. Slide it right on our plate. And then it's all about that dipping sauce. So I am gonna put it on a new one off to the side. Maybe I better do it a little bit smaller. A smaller one that they'll still be able to dip into it. Oh, that's beautiful. Now my husband doesn't like guacamole, so I won't put that on his. But look at this. Carnitas tacos. I'm going to say burrito style because you have the au jus there. And then we're going to do a puffy, I guess I would call this a puffy tostada. Is that gorgeous, crispy Carnitas meat? All right, so we've got that. We'll put the pico over the top of it. And then I am going to move this out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and unplug this and move it out of the way. On mine, I like to put the guacamole and the sour cream. Kind of wipe up this mess. Okay. So we got that. I just made a video for the guacamole, so you're going to want to look that up. So I just put a little guac. And then I put some sour cream. Like that. Very good. Dust it with some more seasoning. And let's see, what else do I want to do? A little hot sauce, Tapatio is what I go for. And then I always do a little bit of fresh lime juice. And there you have it. There is some fine looking carnitas. So I'll get some close-up of these, and that's it. I hope you make these and enjoy them. I know it's a little bit of work, but it really does pay off.